This week on the other side, the housing crisis, your mortgage, your job security, and our economy overall. Just how bad is it? And are our bureaucrats and politicians telling us the truth? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. We'll explain why with our panel of economists and analysts, and we'll talk about what you can do to protect yourself, your family, and your wealth. And we'll meet a young immigrant who is a patriot and on the centre-right side of politics and get her take on the immigration debate and the housing crisis. Big show, let's go. G'day Darwin, g'day Launceston, and g'day Australia. This is episode 434 of The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, November 14, 2025. The Other Side is your deep dive on the important issues that matter in Australia and affect us from around the world from a different non-left-wing perspective. We always declare our bias right up front so you know what lens we're viewing things from. We're a news commentary show and we are centre-right politically. We exist to counter what we see as a heavy centre-left bias in the Australian mainstream media to bring you the other side of debates that you may not even hear on the mainstream channels. And we always try to keep it real and give you the data and the facts behind the stories we cover. Something big happened in Australian politics this week. The Liberal Party grew a spine. Well, some MPs did. Some remained as deluded and gutless as ever, and others are just spineless political opportunists who sway with the wind to save their careers. Watch out for those ones. They're the worst. But in short, the Liberal Party has now joined the National Party in formally abandoning a net zero target. Liberal frontbenchers met for more than 3 hours on Thursday. They concluded that they would promise to stay in the Paris Agreement and set interim emission reduction targets, but they would not commit Australia to any net zero target in the long term. One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, says trying to keep a commitment to the Paris Agreement while dumping net zero is a con job. She says One Nation is united on both. The coalition never will be, and that One Nation backs a clear policy that supports Australian families and businesses for lower power prices and better energy security. So what exactly does net zero mean anyway? Well, net zero means reaching carbon neutrality. Okay, what is carbon neutrality? It means balancing the amount of greenhouse gases emitted into the atmosphere with the amount removed from it. So you can still produce emissions, but you've got to offset them by removing or absorbing an equal amount. Now, Australia has vast forests and natural carbon sinks. It's not carbon neutral overall, but almost. Now, we like numbers on this show because numbers do not lie most of the time. So what are the numbers? Bureau of Meteorology data says that Australia emits about 450 million metric tons of carbon dioxide on average each year. And our forests absorb around 350 of it, 350 million tons. So we're still 100 million in the red, so to speak. So let's say that you believe that global warming is caused primarily by man-made CO2. That is the scientific consensus. That's true. Most scientists do believe that. There are still many people, of course, yes, even scientists who do not believe that. But let's say that they're right. And let's assume for argument's sake that it is as bad as some experts say, and it is so bad that we do need to reduce that 100 million tonnes down to zero. What impact will that have on the world and on climate change? How does our 100 million here in Australia compare with other countries? Well, China produces about 12,000 million tonnes a year of CO2. 12,000 million tonnes. And it only has an absorption of 1,000 million tonnes. So they are 11,000 million in the red. That's 110 times us. India has about 2.5 thousand million in net emissions, so 25 times us. America is 50 times us. You get the picture? We go net zero, it has no effect. So we don't owe the world anything. We're absorbing almost all that we're producing. And we won't have any impact on global warming by cutting to net zero. But it will cause massive pain for many people. It's the job of politicians to make good decisions for Australia. And abandoning the ridiculously useless net zero Paris targets is the right thing to do for Australia. To not do it means we're putting ourselves at very serious risk of very damaging economic effects. And in case we have a couple of lefties watching who think that economics is a dirty word because it relates to money and we shouldn't worry about money because money is evil, Let me just translate that for you into touchy-feely kindness and compassion speak. This week, we also learned that some people are waiting 6 years to see a medical specialist under our public healthcare system. That's because there's no money left. So economic health matters. Economic health of our country is our human health. And 99% of right-wing people care about the economic health of our nation because we care about humans. Net zero also puts us at massive risk in terms of national defence by weakening our energy independence and security, our manufacturing capabilities, and our productivity. So make sure you understand, net zero isn't neutral. Carbon neutral is not human and health neutral. It's bad. It's a human and health negative. And so we must not do it unless there is huge benefit. And there isn't. And this brings me to my main point. Something big happened in Australian politics this week, and it wasn't just about net zero. By standing up to the left on this issue, the right has hopefully learned a big lesson that's going to help it in dealing with many other controversial issues, especially hopefully those gutless weakings on the moderate or wet side of the Liberal Party who always cave in to the children emotionally screeching on the left. The lesson is this, that sometimes mum and dad and grown-ups in the room, if you actually just stand up to the screaming, screeching, bratty teenagers and children and simply say, no, you learn that there's nothing that they can do except throw a big tantrum. I don't know if you watched the coverage of Susan Lee making the announcement about the decision to abolish net zero as policy on Thursday, but the little lovies on the news desk at the ABC and the reporters in the room from the Canberra Press Gallery just couldn't comprehend it. It just didn't compute in their dear little brains that the grown-up half of the country is saying no. Susan Lee and her shadow Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Dan Tehan, fronted the Canberra Press Gallery. Instead of putting the focus on the politicians in this clip that I'm going to show you, though, I want you to enjoy a little compilation of the efforts of our journalists. It's been many years since I've sat at the press conference as a journalist, and it's always very enlightening. Enjoy.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
For the last question.
You said you're staying in Paris. Can you just explain your understanding of how that relates to the current national NDC? Have you got advice, some other explanation for why you can ignore that target, those numbers for 2030 and 2035? Will you scrap those numbers when you get in?
The Paris Agreement requires targets to be set and for them to progress on previous targets. It doesn't allow backsliding. How can you say you're committed to the Paris Agreement? Surely your plan is in breach of Australia's obligations.
Well, our policy will always be in the interests of affordable energy for Australian households. And I'm not going to say there's some detail in an international agreement that prevents us doing what we know we need to be doing for Australians.
Can you just explain how you will guarantee emissions will fall when you're building the most polluting elements of the economy and you're creating new ones?
Or you were committed to genuine emissions reduction. Is that a goal, and can you quantify that at all and tell Australians what success when it comes to genuine emissions reductions looks like for a coalition government?
So our commitment is that we will reduce emissions on average year on year. And I can point to our record in government. That's what we did then. And we will do that in line, doing our fair share with comparable countries. And we'll do it as far and as fast as technologies will allow. So that's our three commitments. Just moving on to Karen. Hang on, we are going around. So
you said you want a greater proportion of base load power in the energy grid. Now, we already hit minimum operating demand because of the penetration of rooftop solar. So if you want more coal-fired base load power in the system, you'll have to tell households to turn off their rooftop solar.
So what your question shows quite clearly is what an abject failure the government's approach has been.
if energy is unaffordable, everything is unaffordable.
Ms. Lee, if you win the election in May 2028, when will that mum with small kids open her power bill and see it lower? When?
Well, I can 100% guarantee that energy prices, power bills will be lower under us.
So in the coming years, when Australians are counting the cost of fires and floods and other natural disasters, is your response going to be to them, don't worry, we just did our share? And to Dan Tehan,
What is AEMO, the CSIRO Treasury, getting wrong when they repeatedly say that renewables will ultimately be the cheapest form of energy?
I'll simply say, Claire, that don't believe any forecasts this government gives you because they can't answer your basic questions on what it will cost to provide the 2035 emissions reduction targets.
Ah, the wonders of the Australian mainstream media, our Canberra press gallery there. And when Greens Senator Sarah Hanson-Young spoke, the shock was even more apparent. She demanded the Labor government stop making deals on environmental legislation with the coalition. She said the policy was worse even than Scott Morrison's. She fibbed about the science again, saying the Liberal Party have made it clear that they don't accept the science. She misled about the Liberals' intentions, saying they don't care about the need to protect our environment for future generations. The usual emotional nonsense that's just plain false. She then tried to say that leaving net zero won't cut power bills, but it will hike taxes and living costs for everyday Australians. I'm really not sure how she works that one out. And she rolled out all the usual ill-informed, misleading and bratty name-calling that we're now so immune to and tired of, calling the coalition anti-science, anti-environment. The Liberals have torched what little environmental credibility they had left, she said. Oh, please. The Greens stopped being an environmentally credible party decades ago when they turned into a radical far-left mob of socialists pretending to be green. You don't have a monopoly on the science. The science is not completely settled. There is a consensus. But most Aussies are fed up with your nonsense, and we are not going to let you shout and tantrum your way into wrecking our economy. Sorry, Sarah Hanson-Young, the game is up. She said that Labor had to choose between polluters, loggers, and the environment wreckers, or to truly protect nature and negotiate with the Greens. Oh, my God. It was like, what? What do you mean no? Nobody's ever said no to me before. I always get what I want. I can scream and get really mad and call you mean, nasty names and throw a tantrum and slam my bedroom door really hard if you don't do what I demand, Mum and Dad. Well, Mum and Dad have finally realised they can say no to the little brats that have been controlling so much of Australia's cultural and political direction in the past couple of decades. So this is a lesson and an awakening for the Liberals, and one that I hope they take seriously and learn the bigger lesson from and apply to other traditionally Liberal Party conservative-leaning policies on controversial issues. It's okay to say no to the screeching children. Not only will you survive, you might even find you get stronger. SmartKits Australia is a leading supplier of prefabricated home improvement kits, so you can do it yourself, save money and hassle. SmartKits Australia is the easiest way to improve your home and build memories that last forever. Buy online, customize your way, get it built. That's the SmartKits way. Decks, patios, pergolas, flyover roofs, carports, and insulated roofing, all prefabricated, fully engineered, and delivered anywhere in Australia. You can choose from hundreds of pre-designed SmartKits on their website, or you can go custom with SmartKits' in-house design team. Every kit is engineered tough, packed smart, and delivered free anywhere in Australia. And don't worry if you're not so handy. If you need it installed, they can do that too. Their licensed builder network can get you started even faster. It's up to you. So save thousands on your own 100% Australian-made smart kit. Build your own outdoor lifestyles with SmartKits Australia. SmartKits.com.au, a proud sponsor of The Other Side. We said at the time that the policy was introduced that it would probably be a disaster, and it kind of has been. Albo and Jimbo's brilliant 5% deposit scheme for first home buyers. Everyone who'd studied high school economics said at the time, hang on a moment, that's only going to increase demand for houses, which, when there's no supply in the market, means prices will go up. Don't be silly, said our genius Labor government economists. It won't drive up housing prices by much. Treasury originally forecast that, yes, the deposit scheme would put upward pressure on house prices, but they said, don't worry, it'll only be about 0.6% over 6 years. Were they wrong? Was 0.6% over 6 years a little optimistic? Yeah, just a bit. According to its monthly property data report, Cotality, formerly RP Data, has shown that prices are up as much as 1.9% in just 1 month. 1 month, not 0.6% in 6 years, as the genius overpaid bureaucrats in Treasury seem to think. I reckon some heads need to roll, don't you? Starting with Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer. And let's not let the bureaucrats get away with this horrific error. It might be time for the Secretary of the Treasury, Jenny Wilkinson, to also hand in her resignation after just 5 months in the top job. And some of the economists who crunched those numbers should be put out to pasture too. How can you possibly get it that wrong? Let's break it down. Remember, they said it'd be 0.6% in 6 years that prices might go up because of this harebrained 5% deposit scheme for first home buyers. They laughed and mocked anyone who suggested it would be a disaster for jacking up prices already well beyond the reach of most normal wage earners. So what happened? In the past 28 days, according to Cotality, prices in Sydney and Melbourne are up 0.7%, not 0.6 in 6 years, but 0.7 in 1 month. And in the fastest growing capital cities, it's much worse. Adelaide 1.4%, Brisbane 1.8%, and Perth a whopping 1.9% in 1 month. A Year 10 economics student could have told them, you increase demand when there's a supply shortage and prices go up, Einstein. It ain't rocket science, Jimbo. And while Jimbo and Albo are busy increasing demand in an already overheated market with their harebrained schemes to help home buyers, the idiots in our city councils are busy throttling supply even further. Some councils are more than 70% behind their housing approval targets. University of New South Wales economics professor Gigi Foster told Sky News this week that an objective observer would be sorely tempted to conclude that the intent of this policy amendment is to increase property prices. Part of me thinks that our politicians are so ignorant of basic economics that they're unable to design policies that will in fact bring down property prices. Now, there are, of course, other factors at play in these price rises. It's not all due to the 5% deposit scheme, but it's clear as day that the deposit scheme is a very big one of those factors. Joining me this week for the last time for 2025, our Other Side regulars, economist Jean Tunney from Adept Economics, former Bloomberg data analyst and News Corp journalist Dan Petrie, and Executive Director of the Australian Institute for Progress think tank and researcher Graham Young. Gentlemen, am I being a little too harsh on the Secretary of the Treasury and the Treasurer, do you think?
No.
Seriously? Oh, I thought you were sitting there scolding me there.
Well, there's aspects of this scheme that people haven't picked up on. When we pay people the dole, or unemployment benefits, how rude of me to call it the dole, we pay them the same amount, no matter where they live. And that sends economic signals that if you're in a place that's too expensive, perhaps you need to move out of there. What we're doing with the housing is we pay people in Sydney more than we pay people in Brisbane or Adelaide or Perth, where housing's cheaper and more affordable. So they're actually, it's not just that they're getting more people into the market, they're getting more people into the wrong markets.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's critical. I mean, we've got to try to, but getting people.
Well, it's inequitable. You know, this is a government that's always on about equity, but they're saying, oh, if you live in Albanese's electorate, well, we'll give you more money towards a house than if you live in, I don't know, David Littleproud's electorate.
Yeah.
And that in itself is just a really poor design feature.
Yeah. And that's because the implicit or the guarantee is worth more in
That's
dollar
right.
terms in those more expensive
Because
markets.
a 5% deposit is larger in those markets. But don't forget Uncle Albo's rich uncle shared equity scheme, which has the same feature to it, that they'll lend you more money, they'll give you more equity if you're in Sydney or Melbourne than if you're in Perth or Adelaide.
Part of it is where the jobs are, though, right? I mean, and that's the problem. We've got that government employment problem. The fact that so many people are employed by government that they have to be living in the cities, near the CBDs.
Oh, well, you solve that with public transport, or you move your government departments out somewhere. You don't solve it by tiering your welfare system so that it's easier for people to live closer on the public teat like that. That just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts on the percentage that this sort of increased demand and this deposit schemes contributed to this problem?
But the criticism was well broadcast by many. The only thing I kind of can observe is the more government, particularly federal government and the state government, for example, particularly in the dying days of Labor government, they had taken to buying up bus terminals and all sorts of weird infrastructure to house people. The more the government seems to get involved, it's the friction.
Yeah.
And it's actually making the problem worse. And so that might be the overreach of Big Brother, but it's quite obvious that a 5% deposit scheme, the more you tamper with the market mechanism, you don't get the intended result. Now, it's lovely to kind of want people into the property market, but I can only see, and in my lifetime, any program like this only increases prices.
Someone once said to me that left-wing governments know how to play checkers, drafts, but they don't know how to play chess. They never think 2 steps ahead. It's like, here's an immediate problem. Let's just deal with that immediate problem. And then that creates another problem.
They're very good at the announceable. I mean, and then, and to be fair, when the Conservatives get into government, they tend to go, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
We spent all this time tearing down, the centre left incumbent. We get in and, we tend to just manage as opposed to the real problem around, and Graham made a good point, you move these functions, you decentralise a little bit, you be pragmatic about it, but Australia's got this problem where it doesn't suffer from a shortage of land. In fact, we don't even suffer from a shortage of towns. But the concentration of work and the crowding out of that, and increasingly you've got government believing they're a panacea for everything. They're creating energy companies, they're creating housing companies, they're creating all sorts of NGOs, for want of a better description, and some are arguably not very effective, but they tend to be a draw because they pay better wages, and as a result, this housing crisis we talk about is a function of the fact that the private sector is not really generating the jobs.
Yeah. No.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more. 10 million full-time workers in this country and 2.6 million of them work for the government. Let's take a look at the 12-month change in housing prices, according to the November report from Cotality, which was out this week. So you can see Sydney 4%, Melbourne 3.3%. The big increases in Brisbane, Perth and Darwin there, pretty much in the double figures. Perth almost nudging that 10% mark, I guess. Yeah, this is not great. Despite the lower year-on-year sort of house price rise for Sydney, median house prices there reached $1.25 million for the first time in history. This isn't really sustainable, is it, Gene? I mean, it's a pretty scary state of affairs.
Yes, I'd say it is. I think a lot of it's been driven by FOMO and I mean, people just potentially borrowing too much money. So there is a risk there. I mean, we're starting to see like a lot of international comparisons which suggest we're on the wrong path. So certainly it is a big risk. And yes,
the national median capital city value for the whole country, across the whole country now, is almost $1 million. It's $960,000 to get a median house price in Australia, which is a pretty high multiple of the average wage, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, there's that old saying about how Australians, they'll eat dog food before they give up their house or they'll default on their mortgage. So, look, it's a very hard thing to forecast when a correction will come if it does come. But I mean, eventually you'd have to say prices have to get to more reasonable levels, or they have to the rate of increase can't keep going at this rate. Certainly not that 10% for Brisbane or whatever it was. I mean, that's just not sustainable. There has been a lot of investor interest in Brisbane, of course, and that's partly due to the Olympics. We've had a lot of interstate migration, so migration from New South Wales and Victoria, in addition to the international migration. SEQ, Queensland, I think they look great, particularly compared with Victoria.
What do you think is causing the big hike in Darwin?
Darwin, that's a good question. I imagine there'd be significant investor interest because it would have been seen as a more affordable market. So there's a search for yield. So as other markets go up in price, and then all of the property investors are looking around, where can I invest now to get the yield? And so I think that's probably part of it, because we've seen prices in Brisbane jump up. So I imagine that's part of it. And also I think people would look at Darwin and say, well, there's a good source of ongoing demand there because of the military role in Darwin.
And potential mining, I suppose, in that part of the world. The fact that the dollar isn't worth what it used to be, is a bit of a big part of the problem. Our wealth is being eroded by government continuing quantitative easing or printing of money or those sorts of policies, overspending and borrowing generally. You're in the property market, you look at your house value and you think, the price went up, but in actual fact, with the dollar going down and, in gold terms or in other terms, other value metrics, it's not really going up in value. It's just costing more, and your wealth hasn't really gone up. And if you're a
It's
boomer,
all relative,
you're going to be housing your kids if you're boomer or Gen X, right?
Might be low tide, but the waves still look just as high.
Yeah, right.
Certainly on international comparisons, we're the second wealthiest country in the world. And I think that goes to your point in some respects, in that wealth is in housing. And it's not really wealth, like it's not productive. The return on it is not. You used to reckon on a gross return on rental properties of somewhere around 6%.
Right.
Now it's something like 3%.
Yeah.
You buy BHP shares, you'll get 4%. They'll do the management for you, so forget about the real estate agent, and they'll pay the tax for you, and they'll save money to refurbish the assets as they go along. So depreciation, everything's taken care of. So
you've got to get the capital growth in the house investment, haven't you?
Well,
otherwise it's not.
So most housing investors do it via financial engineering. And they're in it for the capital gains. And I think one of the dangerous things in this 5% deposit is 5% is really a very tiny deposit. And prices can fluctuate by 5% in either direction. Even in a rising market, you might suddenly find you're in a spot where, for some reason, you bought when there was a bit of a peak and it's all fallen back. So
now
you
you
get
owe
into trouble and you
more
can't.
than you've got to, more than your value of your house.
Yeah. So the government, if they're underwriting your insurance, they've actually got a vested interest in making prices go up. So we've got an affordability crisis. We need prices in real terms to come down. Now, there's ways you can kind of manufacture that a bit with a bit of inflation. So it might nominally look like you haven't lost any value, but over time you do.
Like Gigi Foster said, it looks like they're trying to keep the value.
Well, I don't know that they know what they're trying to do. We certainly had Claire, what's her name, the housing minister. Yeah, she said, we want house prices to go up.
Yeah, I think she meant at a healthy pace. But
So the irony is young people are voting for the party that wants to make housing less affordable, and young people are saying we don't have a future because we can't afford a house. And if you can't afford a house, you can't afford a family, and your retirement's going to look pretty rocky.
All right, quick break. We'll be back to talk more with our panel of experts on the housing situation and what we can do about it. Did you know that with a virtual private network or VPN on your computer, tablet or phone, you can log into your favourite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages. And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there. As a viewer of the other side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/other side. That's piavpn.com/other side. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep the other side going and growing. In August 2023, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese admitted himself that the problem with housing in this country was a lack of supply. After a national cabinet meeting, he announced a plan to ensure that the nation will build 1.2 million homes in 5 years. That's 20,000 homes every single month, or 60,000 every quarter. By the way, National Cabinet brings together the Prime Minister, State Premiers and the Territory Chief Ministers to coordinate national policy, especially on issues that cross jurisdictions like health and housing and energy, infrastructure and emergency management. It was created in March 2020 by Scott Morrison to replace the old Council of Australian Governments, or COAG, and it meets several times a year, sometimes with the relevant state or federal ministers joining as needed. It is not an official or constitutional body. Cynics say it's classic ScoMo stuff, a very good way for our leaders to shift blame onto each other when dealing with sensitive issues. It's not surprising Albo embraced the idea. Chalk up another one for the Uniparty blob. Anyway, maybe I am being a bit too cynical about the old National Cabinet, but here's what Albo said about the housing plan after the August 2023 National Cabinet meeting.
All governments recognise the best way to ensure that more Australians have a safe and affordable place to call home is to boost housing supply. That's why National Cabinet has agreed to an ambitious new national target to build 1.2 million new well-located homes over 5 years from the 1st of July 2024.
Okay, so he was very clear there. The problem is supply. And National Cabinet has agreed to aim for a new ambitious target to build 1.2 million new homes in 5 years from July 1, 2024. So we're a year and a bit in. A few things we should note. First of all, governments don't build homes. Businesses build homes. I know lefties think the government does everything, but it doesn't. Usually it just gets in the way, and the less it does, the better. Now, I've had a lot of experts on this show over the past few years saying that the housing problem is a supply problem, and the big cost of building new housing is due to high government taxes, which make up as much as 40 to 50% of the cost of a new build in a city like Sydney, depending on how you measure it. The other problem is the idiocy of city and shire councils. Local government is a huge hindrance to getting that supply problem solved. Crazy overregulation, political stubbornness, red tape, green tape, and sometimes even just straight out corruption are all making doing housing developments just too unattractive and risky for many. And if they do get done, very, very costly. And in the end, it's us that have to pay. Interestingly, back in August 2023, in the same news conference after the National Cabinet meeting, Albo seemed to recognise the problem with local councils.
National Cabinet has agreed to an ambitious new national target to build 1.2 million new well-located homes over 5 years from the 1st of July 2024. National Cabinet also agreed to a national planning reform blueprint that we will distribute, with planning, zoning, land release and other measures to improve housing supply and affordability. The blueprint includes updating state, regional and local strategic plans to reflect housing supply targets, promoting medium and high density housing in well-located areas close to existing public transport connections, amenities and employment, and streamlining approval pathways.
A planning reform blueprint with planning, zoning, land release and other measures to improve housing supply and affordability. Well, whatever the great leaders of our federal and state governments decided, it isn't working yet. Joining me to discuss is our panel of experts this week, economist Jean Tunney from Adept Economics, former Bloomberg data analyst and News Corp journalist Dan Petrie, and Executive Director of the Australian Institute for Progress think tank and researcher Graham Young. Graham, I'll start with you this time. How do you think that the planning reform blueprint is working out? Have we seen the massive rezoning and streamlining of approval processes that was promised by Albo there 2.5 years ago?
Got no idea how he thought he was going to do that because there's no mechanism that I'm aware of. Planning is done by councils basically under general direction by the state governments. We've got too many planners. I saw a figure the other day. I can't tell you the exact numbers, but there's a lot more planners involved in approving something today than there was even 20 years ago. And a lot of these planners come, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but they come straight from university into planning departments. They've got no idea how the market works. And they think the solution to the housing crisis is to go up. But you can't. Building costs on a 2-bedroom unit anywhere in Brisbane, $650,000, and we haven't put in profit, land, payment for infrastructure, etc. You can't bring that product in for less than $1 million. So you've got to go out.
Well,
you actually
can't build
need.
A house in, sorry, finish.
No,
You
you
can't build a house in Brisbane for less than $1 million.
That's a unit, a 2-bedroom unit, and put it on the market.
$1 million. That's a bit scary. If that's not a disincentive to investors, what is?
Well, that's what the Property Council has been saying, and it underlines the affordability problem that we're having. I think we do. I mean, I guess what we've done is because we've got a lot of character protection of housing, we allow development in certain areas, and so we're constrained to particular types of development, like the big apartment blocks or the apartment towers, which Graham has mentioned can be expensive. I think there's a growing movement for more gentle density.
The infill model, which is basically what everyone wants, is incredibly expensive. And also that's also reflected in the numbers. I mean,
The infill model is the density, increasing the
Absolutely.
density in the inner city areas.
and to Jean's point, I mean, that's this creation, this urban village style thing, and that's probably not a bad thing. The way the economy is going, more people, particularly those in the civil service, are also working in the suburbs. They're working from home a lot more, so you've got consumption patterns almost like a donut. You know, the CBD's hollowed out a bit, and
Yeah. You've come up with a little bit of a tricky little gadget.
I have.
I like a lot.
I have.
So you've launched this thing that's tracking how well Albo and Co are going in terms of reaching this 1.2 million new homes being built by the community, not by the government, in 5 years since July 1 last year.
yeah, and I can tell you now, not well.
The National Housing Accord tracker.
So it's
Total target 1.2 million, 1,200,000 homes. We've got 4 quarters reported so far. Base quarterly target 60,000. Actual dwellings to date should be 240,000.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's
So
about
4
100
quarters.
170.
It's 172,416.
So basically, Tony Abbott had a better run rate than Albanese. He didn't even have a policy on it. So the sheer run rate is they need to be building 60,000. They're lucky to be getting to 45,000. Of that 45,000,
Well, I love the fact you've built this. This is a great little website. Let's just show that again quickly, John. The current shortfall is 67,584 already, and that's after only 4 quarters, after 1 year's worth. The revised quarterly target, so if you think of it as the run rate in a one-day cricket match.
oh, Gene said it before we came on air. You know, we should call it the Michael Bevan calculator.
There you go.
I mean, you know, but
So the revised run rate is 64,000 now they've got to do every quarter.
you know, and I just need Tony Gregg going, they really need to pick up the pace right now because
Okay, housingtracker.com.au, folks.
Yeah.
Look at that and play with it. There were a couple of other things in that totality data that was released this week that I do want to get your thoughts on, gentlemen. Let's have a look at this. The totality of Australian residential real estate value over time. So just having a look at that, the residential real estate underpins Australia's wealth. Residential real estate's worth $12 trillion. So to give you a sense of how much that is, how much value that is sitting in real estate and residential real estate, Australian superannuation is $4.3 trillion total superannuation. Australian listed stocks total $3.6 trillion, and commercial real estate $1.3 trillion. $12 trillion. That's the sort of number that makes economists shiver, isn't it, Gene Tunney?
At the moment, if you look at the financial stability data that the Reserve Bank put out, then you'd say, well, is there really a problem? People don't seem to have problems servicing their mortgages. The rate of arrears is very low, I mean, under 1%. So we're not seeing signs of an imminent crash yet. I think it is a risk if we do have a major downturn, if we have a significant, a severe recession, say a 91-style recession, and then people can't repay their mortgages, people become unemployed, then you could see a very severe property market correction. That could have financial stability implications for our banks. So it's certainly a risk. But look, I mean, if we can have a sensible economic management, if we can have sensible monetary policy from the Reserve Bank, which does prevent excessive credit growth, then potentially we can get this back on track if we can improve supply. So I'm not going to panic about it just
good.
yet.
All right. But it's 2.5
it is a
trillion in
risk.
mortgage debt there. 2.5 trillion in mortgage debt in that 12 trillion.
Yeah.
So that's not too bad a ratio,
I
guess.
Well, I guess Australians do. We have one of the highest household debts in the world. So I'd say if you looked at the data and you compared us with other OECD economies, you'd say, yes, we're highly leveraged in terms of mortgage debt. So that is a large number for the size of our economy.
Okay, let's have a look at the chart for the total value of Australian residential real estate over time, going back to 2009 in this chart. And you can see that the total value of Australian residential real estate was at about 4 trillion back then, and it's increased now to 12 trillion, increasing quite significantly since about 2019, so pre-COVID, when it was at 7 trillion. So, it's a bit pointy.
I think the real issue is probably a misallocation of resources question. So our housing is a larger proportion of our wealth than most other countries. Like in the US, I think it's about 6 times earnings on average will buy you a house, and here it's something like 10 times.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the exact figures, but that's roundabout in the ballpark.
Yeah.
That's money that's going into putting a roof over your house, over your head, that isn't going into earning you a living. So, you quote the stock market, what was it, 4 trillion?
Yeah.
Versus 12 trillion. Well, the 4 trillion is what pays the bills. The 12 trillion employs carpenters and developers and people like that. But it's a minor contributor in terms of overall wealth.
Yeah, it's not real productivity sitting in that.
Part of that increase was a rational reaction to interest rates going down.
Yep.
Because if you've got interest rates at 2 or 3%, you can afford a much larger loan.
Yep.
Basic economics tells you that if people can pay up, they will pay up. If there's a demand situation there, so that's what happened. And now what's happened is interest rates have gone back to more normal, and suddenly it's really crunching people in terms of the payments.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll come back in a moment with a bit more of our expert panel. As we continue to discuss things, we're going to look at the question of just how good the Australian economy is overall, and we'll hear from the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, who's got some interesting thoughts. Did you know that with a virtual private network, or VPN, on your computer, tablet or phone, you can log into your favourite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages? And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there, as a viewer of the other side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/other side. That's piavpn.com/other side. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep the other side going and growing.
You're watching The Other Side with Damien Coorey, Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month. This is The Other Side.
The Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia is a British guy named Andrew Houser. He used a cute horse racing analogy near Melbourne Cup Day to explain the Reserve Bank's monetary policy at a recent conference that was run by the big investment bank UBS. Houser's message was that Australia is in a good position, recovering and operating near full capacity, but constrained by supply. What that means, he is saying, is this: if business simply invested more and lifted productivity, we would, in his words, be off to the races. But if not, he warned, we could end up like the Melbourne Cup favourite, Presage Nocturne, boxed in at the rail. Graham Young is one of our panellists on the show this week. He wrote some of those words in a recent article. Graham's the executive director and founder of the think tank, the Australian Institute for Progress, and a regular commentator on this show. He says the RBA Deputy Governor's analogy about the Australian economy is as far removed from reality as the economy he was describing. Graham says this narrative is convenient for both the government and the Reserve Bank itself because it ignores the serious problems created by their own policies. Graham, this is not the economy that investors into Australia and Aussie business people actually face, is it? So no. Business can't just get it going.
Well, in a sense, it is what they face. Like, you can't argue with his figures, but the fact is his interpretation is completely off with the fairies.
Yeah.
This guy is basically saying, oh, no, everything's fine. It's business's problem. It's not business's problem. They've been frozen out by government. We've got far too much money being spent on non-productive parts of the economy, some of it not directly by government, but indirectly, and that's the energy transition. We're pushing up energy prices. We've got an ossified industrial relations system now, particularly in our most productive sector being mining. They've taken us back to something that didn't even exist in the 60s. And even in normal businesses, there's all sorts of employment practices. The other day, Westpac told a lady she had to come in and work from the office, and she said, no, I put my kids into a private school an hour the other direction, I'm not going to do that. She took them to Fair Work, and Fair Work said, no, you can't make her come back into the office.
God,
And now 10 years ago, you would have said, if that doesn't suit you, maybe you could find another employer.
Yeah.
Now they say, no, sorry, the employee tells you how to run your business.
Yeah, it's very attractive for business at the moment, isn't it? You just can't wait to go out and start a business and start hiring people. You have so much control over.
You can't fire people; it's hire. That's
Yeah,
basically it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a incredibly the industrial relations system. You're quite right. I mean, you have a situation now where like any small business will basically go. Oh, it's going. We need staff. It's a case of, do I want staff? Do I want the headache
burden.
which goes
exactly.
with it?
I know a lot of people who are just saying no. I should introduce you, Bloomberg data analyst and News Corp, former Bloomberg data analyst and News Corp journalist Dan Petrie. And also we have on our panel this week economist Jean Tunney from Adept Economics. So basically Andrew Howes is painting a very rosy picture and saying that business just has to pull its finger out and go for it. Let's take a listen to some of what he actually said at that UBS conference.
But really, you need to be thinking about investment in this economy and private investment in particular. When you kind of list the... I don't want to go into sales mode too much, but when you list the potential aspects of Australia as a place for investing, the list just goes on and on. I mean, I say it's an outsider in a sense, so I mean, I don't think I'm biased. The minerals, old and new, the world-leading universities, the human capital, which we all score very highly of, the plum position in the Asia-Pacific, we've just been hearing about, the huge domestic savings pool, super fund industry, fourth in the world at the moment, fourth biggest at the moment, going to be second. Your UBS report that you've just published shows that Australia has the second largest median wealth per head of any country in the world except Luxembourg, which probably doesn't deserve to be first. So that's a stunning statistic, I think. One of the lowest public debt stocks in the G20, strong banks, proven institutions, a long track record of welcoming capital and labour. So if you're thinking about the predeterminants of a great investment proposition, Australia must be high up your list.
Well, you would think so. We should be high up people's lists, but we aren't, are we, Jean? I mean, what are the things that are turning people away from investing in Australia, turning people away from setting up businesses here or wanting to employ people?
If you look at the metrics such as where we sit in world competitiveness indicators, we've fallen from around the top 10 down to we're almost going to get out of the top 20. I think we've gone from 7 to 18 on one of those IMD world competitiveness, I think it's IMD indicators. So that's reflecting just all of the additional regulation that we've layered on to the economy over the last couple of decades. So I think we're in a position in the 90s and the 2000s where we had that era of microeconomic reform supported by both sides of government. We had Hawke Keating, Howard Costello. We were going great. We were back in the top 10 of the OECD in terms of per capita income. But now we're struggling. We're stagnating.
We're actually in a per capita recession and have been for quite some time, right? I mean,
well,
it's not Michael Jackson bad as in a good thing. It's bad, you know, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, the perception of Australia is expensive. It's industrial relations framework.
Standard & Poor's regularly look at how long it takes to get a mine up and running in various jurisdictions. We're still amongst some of the best in the world, but there's a lot of countries that are better. But it's blown out. It's somewhere around 20 years to get a mine going. Suddenly, rare earths have become fashionable. And one of the mines that money's going into is run by a company called Arafura.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've been going for 22 years trying to get that going. There's still a couple of years away, even with all the international interest in getting that mine up. There's the Fraser Institute.
Investment.
They look at they go down to a smaller level, so they even look at the states. And the favourability in our states, New South Wales and Victoria, has gone backwards really seriously. Queensland's gone backwards a little bit. West Australia is the only place that you'd really say that's a great place to invest in mining in Australia. So it's even the big companies are facing problems from regulations.
Well, that case in point, the Regis gold mine, New South Wales. That was like
the
plebiscite decision, came from nowhere. And
the one they overturned last year.
Now, I can remember being on in Hong Kong on television there, and they said, and the investors said, how can we stop this madness? Australia's turning into a terrible place to invest. That was 15 years ago, and I didn't have long hair and move like a cheetah either back then, but it's gone from that to yet another one to another one where it's, again, the perception is it's just too hard.
Yeah.
And now, like, you know, you got BHP that in their annual report, just even on the coal royalties, said we will not be investing any more in the state of Queensland. This was the industry which changed the game for this state, in the one we're sitting in right now. When perception starts to merge with reality, and whether the government likes it or not, the perception is Australia's a dud in terms of, being able to, fast get a project going, because that regulation tape, that burden, is becoming a real net negative. Yeah. And there's no getting away from that optic.
All right, well, we've diagnosed the problems very well. Do we have any solutions? I mean, what would be your advice to somebody who's watching out there, who's thinking, gosh, I'm over 40, I'm wondering what to do with the rest of my
Argentina.
Retirement.
Argentina.
Apart from
Millet.
Yeah, we're not going to get a libertarian or right-wing government in Australia.
Chile's not
anytime
too bad.
soon. So we're stuck with Labor for a long time, I think, or we're stuck with left-wing thinking and left-wing culture. But I don't see that changing. So what do you do to sort of, I guess, protect your wealth? I mean, we're not financial advisors, and this isn't to be taken as financial advice, and you should talk to your financial planner, but just what can we do to fix this problem more generally, I guess, and at a personal level or at a government level? Gene?
Well, I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket, I suppose. There's the classic advice, diversification. I mean, obviously save, watch your expenses, all the standard sort of household advice we wish that our governments were following, really. Yeah, look, I have great faith in the common sense of the Australian people, so I think we will get back on track. Australia has a lot of advantages. I mean, beautiful country, lots of resources. We just need to fix up a few policy problems we've got now, particularly in energy. That's driving up household bills, business bills. It's causing industries to shut. So we need to reset that conversation. I mean, there's legitimate concerns about there's a desire to decarbonise, but it's going to be folly. It's futile if the rest of the world's not taking any steps, and we're just making ourselves poorer. It's just bad.
Yeah. Okay, optimistic. I like it. Optimistic, more optimistic than I am, which is good. Dan?
First thing, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their life, but Australia's one country, and if you've got skills and they're not being appreciated here, cast an eye offshore. I mean, that's not a bad way to live, but that's not life advice.
With some of your investing, at least.
Well, I'll stop short of offering any advice.
I know.
Except to say that there's, if you like
diversify,
if you like to diversify and see what's going on, there's a range of wonderful ETFs and all sorts of exposure.
Things you can invest in other than housing.
Go and consult with your financial advisor and all the caveats which go with that.
Yeah.
Policymakers need to be a bit bolder. I'm talking special administration regions. See what works. Like, we have not landed a reform blow in more than 2 decades. That's a problem.
Yeah. All right, and Graham, what are your thoughts, apart from moving to Argentina with Javier Milei?
Well, we're all in this together. We're on the good ship Australia, and it really comes down to ideas and the people that implement them. So support think tanks like ours that actually do good analysis and get them into the mainstream. There's not just us. There's a Centre for Independent Studies in New South Wales and the IPA in Melbourne and Page Institute. There's a number around.
And yours is the
Australian Institute for Progress.
Yep.
But I think more seriously, we have a crop of politicians and leaders at the moment who are the worst that I can remember and the worst that I've ever read about. And I think there's a lot of people out there with the ability to contribute and with the practical experience, and that's what we're lacking, practical experience, who need to think seriously mid-career, is this a time for me to actually step aside from this primary career and put my hand up and get into a leadership position in government and spend maybe 10 or 20 years and then you've still got enough time if you're in your 40s these days to go out and do something else in your first career. But I think we seriously need a more patrician, in the Roman sort of sense of the word. And so I'm not matriarchs, I'm not ruling you out. Attitude to government of this country.
We need to get away from the stale, pale and
we need to get away from people who work for a politician when they're at university as an intern, who then get employed in their office and whose boss then lines them up to succeed them in their seat afterwards.
And that's on the Liberal Party side. On the Labor Party side, it's even worse. They
you just have to be born to the right Labor family there, and you're off to the races, to quote the Deputy Governor of the Reserve.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your strong points of view this week. We very much appreciate it. We'll catch you hopefully next year. Graham Young from the Australian Institute for Progress, Dan Petrie, former Bloomberg journalist and data analyst with housingtracker.com.au. Got to check that one out. And Jean Tunney, as always, thank you very much, Jean, for your expertise. The real economist on the panel and adept economics, Jean Tunney. Thanks very much. We'll be back in a moment. If you like The Other Side, one of the best ways you can support us is by signing up for the products of our sponsors. And one of our best sponsors is PIA VPN, the virtual private network that stops people spying on your internet activity. It'll keep you and your family truly safe from the prying eyes of big governments and corporations without slowing down your internet speeds. And you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. You can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and you'll get the discount. And you'll get more info on those special deals if you check it out. That's piavpn.com/otherside. Our next guest is a millennial and an immigrant, and she's a former Liberal National Party federal Senate candidate. Born and raised in China, Sophia Lee immigrated to Australia on her own in pursuit of freedom, equal opportunity, and prosperity. We hear a lot about the negative side of immigration, and when you let in too many people too fast, 1 million in 2 and a bit years into a country of only 28 million people, you are going to have problems. Big social and cultural problems will emerge. But all countries need a bit of immigration. Japan and China have somewhat suffered economically by being a little bit too closed off to the world. Japan's economy has been sluggish because of excessively low immigration and labour shortages. And China has suffered socially and culturally by shutting itself off from the world for many decades last century. A young country like Australia needs a small amount of immigration. That's healthy. And we need to have discretion, of course, in who those immigrants are and how many we take from different places. Australia needs to dramatically cut its intake for a few years, but that doesn't mean we should be treating any immigrant citizens already here as second-class citizens. You can't invite people in, ask them to become a citizen of your country, integrate and assimilate, and when they do all of that and play by the rules and follow all the steps properly and become citizens, treat them as second class. And that's why a good immigration policy is a slow and small one, because once someone's in, they're in. There's no half citizenship. Sophia Lee is a patriot. She holds a bachelor's degree in management and a master's in marketing. She's built a multifaceted career spanning many industries and businesses and government, and her commitment to public service and to Australia is evidenced by her work as an advisor to the Liberal National Party in Queensland. And Sophia is committed to advancing the prosperity, safety and freedom of Australia. I wanted to have her on because she is a millennial and a woman, though. We get criticised for having too many old blokes on this show. I make no apology for that at all, by the way, because old blokes are the wise elders of any society, and if we don't respect them enough in our modern Australian culture, then we're going to suffer for it. But I wanted to also get the young, non-left-wing person's perspective on the housing and the cost of living crisis. So, Sophia, welcome.
Thank you, Damien.
And I do want to talk to you about housing and the cost of living, of course, but you're not just a smart young woman, you are an immigrant too.
Yes.
Immigration is a massive issue right now. So I wanted to get your thoughts on all that. And you're from China. You're from mainland China,
Yes,
right? You're not from Hong Kong or Taiwan, which are, I guess, the more democratic and globalized parts of Greater China. But you are from the mainland land. You grew up in communist China. So let's start there. I mean, what was that like growing up under a communist government in a big country like that?
Sure. Well, I actually was born into a family that's very poor after the Chinese Cultural Revolution. I remember asking my mom every month, Mom, when are we going to stop borrowing money and also being able to feed the family? And Mom had no answer. And I remember the tears in her eyes every time I asked her that question. So that's why I vouch for economic development and prosperity of the country, because I know without that, people, the everyday people, will suffer. So I guess my message to the younger generation who in Australia thinks that communism or socialism might get them prosperity, my answer to them is please think twice. And from a social perspective, I would not be accepted any interview request like this if I was still in China.
Right, that's true. Okay, so well, we probably wouldn't have a show like this, but it is something that worries me that young Australians in particular tend to take for granted the freedom that we have, as if that's like the air that we breathe. It's not, right? We're one of the very few countries in the world where you can speak freely, where you can. Unfortunately, choose your own gender. I guess some would say, unfortunately, we have a lot of freedom here, and that didn't come from nowhere. It came from somewhere, and we probably need to find a little bit more respect for that.
Absolutely, we need to protect that, and I guess also though, many young Australians sort of feel that the democracy that they live in is a birthright, is given. Right. But to millions and millions of people in this world, including me, that was not given. Democracy and the right to vote and the freedom to speak your mind was never a birthright. It was a right that I have to fight for, that I have to work really hard to come to Australia to have. And I guess that's the same situation to many of the immigrants in Australia today. So for people like me, I treasure and I value and what we have, and I think it's a great privilege. And because of it, I fight for it. Because of it, I get into politics. I voice my voice. I wish to show the younger generation that the world of communism, the world of control, the world of someone decides how the wealth and the freedom is distributed is not the ideal world that they might think it is.
Yeah, the centralised control of the means of production is not a good idea. The free market also works very well too, and a lot of people don't realise how the free market works. I don't think we educate kids about what the free market is, what pricing is, how the prices get set by demand and supply in a free market, and that tells, that signals people to make more of a product or make less of a product, or businesses to go into different directions. And everything works quite nicely if you don't meddle, if government doesn't meddle. You joined the Liberal Party, obviously, because you believed in those classical liberal ideas.
Absolutely.
And you still do, which is more than I can say for some members of the Liberal Party, probably, but we won't go there. Don't be too critical of people. But we've seen a bit of a shift left in Australia culturally, and that has even affected the Liberal Party. Are you feeling optimistic about the future for Australia? I mean, as a young person, I ask you as a millennial more than as an immigrant, how do you feel about where we're heading?
I am optimistic. I believe there's a lot of work to be done. We, from the people from the right, need to communicate to our voters a lot more clearly, a lot more connected to their feelings and their concerns on a daily basis. Having said that, I always have great faith in my fellow Australians in that when they get more information, they will make a great judgment call. And I also have great faith because the country that I came to about 20 years ago was a country that people's united. There's a lot of tolerance in each other. There's a lot of understanding of each other. More importantly, there's a lot of willingness to work with each other. There was the kindness, there was the mentorship, there was advice people give me. All of that still lives in people's heart today. It is a matter of bringing that up again. It is a matter of showing people that is okay to be like that again, so we can be united, we can focus on what really matters to our daily lives, we can focus on the prosperity of our country, we can focus on the safety of of our people and our country. And all of that's okay. It's allowed. And it's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's what we should worry about. There's nothing ultra right wing about it.
No, that's right. It used to be just the normal way we went about things.
Absolutely.
How are the new immigrants in Australia? I mean, we have a situation. I mean, you're probably a little bit more plugged into the newer immigrants. My family goes back a few generations, but I remember, that there was always a little bit of tension in the Australian community, and being called a wog boy at school and being picked on a bit, 30, 40 years ago. But I think a lot of people were pleased to see that our country has sort of become a little bit more multi-ethnic. I won't say multicultural because I don't like that term, but multi-ethnic. And we should still have perhaps obviously it's a European heritage country, and that's fine. We need to be, as I said, careful and slow about our immigration, but we can't be making people who are already citizens feel like second-class citizens. How are people feeling, do you think, out there at the moment who are first-generation Australians? And there's a lot of them, by the way, right, because of our immigration recently.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Well, actually, first let me share a little story of me, and then I believe the reason I will share is because I believe that's the story of many Australians. Right? Like you mentioned in your intro, I come to this country in the seek of freedom, prosperity, and equal opportunities. And 20 years later, I can look people into the eye and say, I have gained what I seek. And it's because of Australia. Australia is giving me all of that. And in fact, I owe my father's life to Australia. My father is very unwell right now, and he's getting treatment in Australia.
Right.
And he's only alive because of it. And to me, I would like to give back to my society because of what my society gave me. And that's why I get into politics. That's why I fight for prosperity, for freedom, and I fight for the right to be rewarded for effort again. Right? And I believe my story is a part of an Australian story. It is a story of many, many immigrants who lives in Australia, who pay taxes, who services community. And they are the doctors who treat us when we are unwell. They are the police officers who actually looking after us when it's unsafe. And they are the people working in nursery homes who look after our elderly when we are unable to. And those are the people that we were talking about, right, in terms of the immigrants already in Australia. And right now, a lot of them feel isolated. A lot of them feel unwelcomed and unwanted in their own country. Right? That include Japanese-born comedian, who actually said in his show that he was really scared when he heard about this anti-immigration, anti-mass immigration protest, and he was worried that when he was overseas at the time, but he was worried when he came back, the country is no longer accepting him. And I'm talking about an African immigrant came in very early with his father and his mother telling me, why have I been picked on? I worked so hard. I'm actually talking about an engineer from the UK. Come and look at me into the eyes and go, Sophia, why am I feel that I am no longer a part of Australia? Right. So those are the people that we're talking about, that a lot of the narratives that are out there right now is making them feel unwelcomed. And those are the people that served the yum cha, that cooked the yum cha that the March for Australian participants went and enjoyed afterwards.
Yep.
Right. So for me to preserve...
Well, most of the March for Australia participants are not racist. So a lot of it, and a lot of the march, there were several people of different ethnic backgrounds there as well. And this is the problem we've got, that there are some racists attaching themselves to these movements. But the vast majority of people involved in these marches are people who are concerned about just the speed of the and the effect that that's having on the country, of course, and we all agree that immigration has to be balanced. So I think the way the media covers these things sometimes is a bit troubling too. But we need to have a conversation, and we need to have a nuanced and careful conversation about this, don't we? Because we are in a situation where 1/3 of people in the country now were born overseas.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that comes down to how we articulate our case, and also how we resonate with our audiences, which are, I guess, the third of the Australians being the first generation immigrants.
Yep.
And I can understand from an economics perspective why we need to have a balanced approach on immigration intake. I can totally understand that because I looked into it very carefully. And however, that hasn't been articulated as a priority, I guess. See, when you're in business, one of the things they teach you in, I guess, business management is always start your argument with why.
Yep.
You know, and when we look at current difficulties in access to our services, in buying homes, you know, the cost of housing, and when we look at our infrastructure, when we look at our cost of living, all of those, I guess, are the economic reasons that we need to have a balanced approach on immigration. If I was to talk to, I guess, the immigrants about immigration policies, one of the things I like to say to them is that we need to have a balanced approach because we actually would like you and your children and your family to be able to afford houses, as many as you want, without debt to the eyeballs. And that's only possible if we can manage the demand of housing.
Yes.
And we need to look after our people, the Australians that's in Australia first, before we have the extra resources or the ability to look after people from other countries who wishes to become Australians one day.
Yep. Spoken like a true first-generation immigrant there. They always say the first-generation immigrants are the ones who are the toughest about other people coming in. Yeah, we are out of time, Sophia, but it's been great having you on. We'd like to have you on the show a bit more as a commentator. So I hope you will join us in the new year.
Thank you, Daniel.
But thanks very much for taking the time to be with us today.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Good to talk to you. Thanks. And that's all for this episode of The Other Side, your analysis of the best news commentary without the woke. We will be back next week with episode 435 on Friday, November 21. And clips for this show will be dropping throughout the week as usual on our YouTube, X and Rumble channels. If you like what you see, please do support us. We are a voluntarily viewer-supported show. There are now two ways to support us financially. One's to go to our website at othersidetv.com.au and sign up for the exclusive side for less than $5 a month, or you can now subscribe right on YouTube, if that's where you watch, by simply pressing the join button beside the subscribe button down below. So subscribe for free by clicking the subscribe button. Then you can click the join button as well if you'd like to make a monthly donation to us of a couple of bucks. It's that easy. The QR code at the bottom of the screen that you see throughout the show will always take you to our website to sign up, and we would love to have you on the team. I'm Damien Curry. Bye for now.
The Other Side with Damien Curry is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month.